Welcome to the Three-Man Weave Show hosted by SportsbookReview.com. It's Mid-Major Monday. We're happy you're joining us today. Please like and subscribe on the YouTube channel you are currently watching. Let's get ready to talk some hoops. If you have some comments, some questions, add them to the chat if you're joining us live. We will get to them midway and at the end of the show. Fellas, it's a big mid-major slate today. Well, a small slate, but heavy on the mid-majors. We had a good weekend of basketball. The Weave, solid weekend for us after Black Thursday, as we like to call it. But the Friday show picks, guys, not great still. We need to improve. We need to strive for better. Jim, Matt, hope you guys had a good weekend. Let's go to some takeaways real quick. Jim, what'd you see this weekend?
I saw my heart ripped out of my body and crushed by COVID-19 as it wanted.
Yes.
We finally had the premier matchup at the start of the season. We had Gonzaga Baylor, going to be, no competition early on Saturday, CBS, prime time for people to watch. And then like an hour before the game, heartbreak. No game. We recovered. We watched other games, but man, we hope to still get that one. Mark Few sounded optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll find a way to get that on the schedule still.
Yeah, Matt, how about you?
I'm going a little bit off the beaten path here for my takeaway. It's more of a PSA as well. Support the troops. Talk about the ground troops in Army. The Black Knights have been a covering machine. If you're looking for some value off the main board, deep down in this friendly confines of the extra board, the Army Black Knights have been a wagon. 4-0 against the spread, 12-point cover margin on the year. They got some really good freshmen. They lost a lot, but they've really restocked the talent cupboard there. It's just kind of it's just sort of a random hot take that I wanted to pipe in there. It's a good team, and the way they stymied Florida, to beat LaSalle last night, they're just looking like a well-oiled machine right now. The military schools have value early, folks.
Yeah, indeed. And the team that's not looking like a well-oiled machine is Kentucky. Ouch. Young team.
Yikes.
I'm still saying watch out for later in the year, guys. Georgia Tech, despite their first two losses this year, they are experienced. They've been around the block a few times. Give the Wildcats some time. I know it's like the number one story. They're 1-3. Competition, though, it's been stiff for Kentucky. Give them a couple months. We'll see how the Cats are. Hey, they're like a 10 seed in the tournament. That's a dangerous 10 seed. But we'll move on to our big slate today. We're going to start with Loyola Marymount at UC Santa Barbara. The Gauchos and the Lions. Spread, I believe, is 4, maybe 4.5, or maybe it came down a little bit to 3.5, guys. I think it's been kind of spreading in between those numbers there. We're going to go to Matt for our first take here. LMU's been impressive. Covered twice against Minnesota, killed Long Beach. But Matt, the Gauchos are the presumed Big West favorites. Who do you like in this one?
We're going to have a few incidents on the rundown here where we have teams playing their first game of the season. First D1 game, I should clarify. A few have actually played D2s. But UCSB, the Gauchos, first game. And it just really hasn't gone well for these teams anecdotally in their opening spot. And they're catching an LMU team, which I love. Stan Johnson's done a really nice job with this squad so far. They're really undervalued because their three best players that were supposed to play last season did not. So it's a really unique circumstance in which you're basically looking at a team that's 2 years older from the 2019 rendition, which was one of the better versions that LMU's had. And so you have them 2 years older, now healthy, back together. They kind of have that continuity element that we've been kind of targeting to start the season. So I think LMU, the odds makers have still not yet caught up to their value. I think they're the right play here. Jim, what do you think?
And I sort of agree. Loyola Marymount, I love that situational spot of they've gone on the road to a Big Ten foe, played tough, and now they're playing a team that's only played, I think, St. Catherine. I think that's the only team UCSB has played. And the Gauchos have this there's another team on our outline today that I will echo similar thoughts, but they are a darling on paper because Joe Pasternak brings in some really talented transfers. They have a rising junior in Amadou Sow, who's potential player of the year in the Big West. But they haven't seemed to come together in the same way that somebody like a UC Irvine has in that conference. And so, the basketball games aren't played on paper, and as great as their talent may look with the transfer wire, I'm not sold until I see it really come together. My number doesn't really have any leans here, but I would take Loyola Marymount, if anything, just with that edge and experience of the games.
Yeah, fellas, we have a bit of a pace battle. Stan Johnson seems to want to run so far early in the season. Pasternak always been kind of known for a bit of a slower molasses style of play in the half court. I also lean LMU as a dog, but again, like Jim, my number doesn't lean any ways. We wish Matt the best of luck on his Lions. And we'll move on to the next game. Chattanooga versus Middle Tennessee. This one had a few lines around it near the opening hour or two. I saw some -1.5, -2, some -3. I think it's -2 right now in favor of Middle Tennessee, the Blue Raiders. Chattanooga looked terrible against Tennessee Tech, but then they squeaked out a cover against they squeaked out a cover against Tennessee Tech, but they took down Northern Kentucky, which was an impressive win. Jim, Middle Tennessee's been kind of Jekyll and Hyde this season and last season if you want to go back another year. Who do you like in this game?
Middle Tennessee is the other one I just referred to that is like kind of the mid-major Arkansas where they're reeling in transfers. It's like, oh, this team looks pretty great. They've got Dontrell Schuler in from Charleston Southern, Jared Jones from Northwestern. They're bringing in guys from all over, but man, McDevitt, the coach there, has not gotten it going. They've been super frustrating for 2 straight years now, and even to start this season, they've been a little bit erratic. They've had one good performance, one bad. I can't really trust this team that much. Chattanooga lost their big man in the center, Ramon Villa. He was like their hub of their offense. Post him up. He can draw double teams, opens things up for their shooters on the perimeter, and it's been a little stagnant without him. So I'm concerned on both sides. I do have a lean here or a pick that will come up down in the best bet section. So I'm not going to give that away quite yet, but just know that neither team has been ultra sharp to start the year. But perhaps that'll come together playing an in-state rival. Matt.
Yeah, Jim, I agree with Nugo. With the surprising loss of Villa as well as Matt Ryan, the Vanderbilt transfer that was fantastic for them last year. If you take away those two key pieces, an inverse forward who can score inside and out, go-to meal ticket on the block. Now it just feels like the David Jean-Baptiste show. We love he's a fantastic guard, can make tough shots, but the offense has really been stuck in the mud without those alternative scoring options. My initial lean was certainly toward Nuga, but I think this is a hard stay away for me.
Yeah, you wonder if you're going to get Middle Tennessee that beat Murray by 17 or the one that's been struggling basically every other game this year. It seems like a defensive battle, but I think as Jim was going to allude to later, both teams have been willing to run a little bit lately. We'll move on, though, to our next game, which is not George Washington versus Towson. That game was canceled. Instead, we'll be talking Morehead State versus Eastern Kentucky. This one opened around 11, got bet up to 13. I think it's back down to 12, 12 and a half most places.
What do they know?
What do you guys
know out there? Tell us.
Matt, I have a theory. Morehead's gotten its doors blown off by Ohio State, Kentucky, Richmond, obviously very good teams. They did beat Arkansas State in convincing fashion. But, Matt, the Eastern Kentucky Colonels are 4-0 against the spread. They nearly beat Xavier in overtime. Who do you like in this one, Morehead State or Eastern Kentucky?
The key element here is it's a conference game, right? And I think that is you won't get any sort of late game collapse or wave the white flag from the dog here, which is where I stand. I think Morehead has a ton of value. I was on them against Ohio State. They lost that game by 33. The final score was honestly misleading. They hung in there for a while, and Ohio State just suffocated them the final 10 minutes or so. But I think this Morehead State team's not as bad as they look on paper so far. Their resume obviously isn't stellar. Losing to Richmond by 18 points on neutral doesn't look all that bad right now, given what we saw Richmond do to Kentucky. I just think Morehead's the right play. They just got to take care of the ball. Eastern Kentucky will turn you over at a high rate. If they can keep this in a half court, protect the basketball, I think they have a good chance to stay inside the number in the conference opener. Jim? That's
the key. I mean, it's conference. Things should tighten up a little bit. You can't play as fast and loose. You got to be a little more careful with your shots. These games matter for teams in one bid leagues. Non-conference can be a little more of just like let's work out our rotation. Let's give our freshman big man Johnny Broom some reps inside. Now you really got to be on your game. Going to Eastern Kentucky, who has been fantastic. I think 4-0 against the spread, some tremendous results for them so far. But that's just playing track meets, turning people over. Even Xavier, they were able to turn over. So that's the concern here. But I do think the dog has the value in a conference game here. Chat Mob is saying Alfred Chung saying Morehead's down to 10.5. Okay. I think I'd still like it there, but it's at least a decent indication that it's not continuing to shoot up to 13, which kind of raised our eyebrows at first.
Yeah, I liked it at 10 on the opener, so to see it jump up to 13 was a lovely sign, although I guess a little bit disconcerting if there's something we don't know. But Kai, back to you.
Yeah, Johnny Broom, Jim. Remember the name, the freshman from Morehead. Tyjon Claude is out and doesn't seem to matter because Broom has been excellent in his stead. Another pace battle. A.W. Hamilton plays like the second fastest tempo in the country, and Preston Spradlin, certainly the opposite of the spectrum. I also like Moorhead in this game. The turnover guard aspect concerns me a lot. Moorhead has not been good handling the ball, and that's Eastern Kentucky's bread and butter. But I like the conference aspect. The double-digit spread just seems a bit too high for me. So I will be leaning towards Moorhead as well. And we're going to move on to Florida Atlantic versus North Florida, an in-state rivalry unlike any other. FAU -3, -3.5 last time I saw it. In my head I was like, man, this seems like a disrespectful line if you're FAU, right? North Florida losing all those pieces last year, but FAU also a lot of new faces this year, a lot of turnover. Dusty May, a coach we think is excellent. North Florida without Carter Hendrickson, most likely again, he is their best player. So, Jim, does that skew you towards the Owls in this one over the Ospreys?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I like FAU here. North Florida, for people in the chat or anybody that wants to watch, is one of the most unique teams in the country. They play this zone that's like kind of a 2-3, but it's almost like a 4-1. They just spread way out. And they're kind of just like, all right, go ahead, attack the rim. We'll kind of try to just protect that with one guy, and we'll try to outshoot you on the other end. They are the Birds of Trey. That is the style nickname because they bomb away from deep. But I think Florida Atlantic has the horses to beat them up inside. Their potentially best player, Jalen Ingram, has averaged 24 points a game in the last two against non-D2 teams. He's always been a little sketchy off an ACL injury 2 years ago, but if he's back on form, that is a 20-10 guy waiting to happen. And I don't really see how North Florida defends him without Hendrickson inside. So, yeah, I would go FAU here. Maybe not super confident on it, but what about you, Matt?
Yeah, no, whenever I watch Ingram play, Jim, he's got that massive 30-pound knee brace that always gives me the heebie-jeebies. But when he's right, he is super effective. Speaking of best players, the North Florida, the Ospreys' best player, Carter Hendrickson, is going to be out in this game. I believe he's out for a pretty significant amount of time. Last year, just for context, the Ospreys' offense scored 1.15 points per possession with him on the floor, just 1 point per possession with him off the floor. That gap is basically amplified this season because they lost all the other seniors, that senior-laden core they had last year that had a really strong season. He was kind of supposed to be to drive the bus, and without him, it's a bunch of unknowns. And I think North Florida is going to struggle a lot, especially early on this year. So you're getting a pretty motivated Florida Atlantic team, and what shouldn't be a pretty low home court value spot. I think the Owls are the right play in the Battle of the Birds, Kai.
And I'll just step in here. Hendrickson was 25th in the country in percent of shots taken before he got hurt. And since then, they've lost by 28 at Florida State, no cover.
Yep.
Lost by 11 at High Point, no cover. So, I think maybe the books are catching on after those two performances, but you might have another game or two here to catch them without the value caught up.
Yeah, Jim mentioned Jalen Ingram, 24 points a game in those two non-D1 games. He played like 15 minutes in the last game. He just scores. So hopefully he can recreate that for us Owl backers out there. I also like Florida Atlantic. I'd probably bet it up to -4, then I'd probably stay away if it got that high. But let's go to the chat mob. I don't think we have any questions quite yet, guys. Correct me if I'm wrong.
We have one request. And I don't want to spoil. I forget. The best bets I forgot to write down from both of you. But Fairfield Hartford. Should we talk about that now, or do you want to holster that toward the end? That was a few folks ask about that one.
No best bet on that one, but let's holster that one for the end.
Okay, we will do so.
Okay, we'll move on to not Old Dominion versus James Madison. Instead, that game was canceled, as is the COVID environment.
It's the DMV area. It's the DMV because the GWASH Towson games, DMV area, Old Dominion, James Madison's DMV. Man, it's killing us.
Instead, we're going to talk about Wofford Richmond, a game that was apparently just added to the schedule recently. It's actually going to lead off today. I think it's at 1 o'clock Central. This game opened at 14. Richmond was favored by 14, got bet down immediately. I think it's around 12.5 right now. Richmond obviously coming out of quarantine. They did beat Kentucky earlier in the year, obviously very impressive. Wofford, their first non-D1 game. Matt, we'll go to you. Do you like your Terriers, or do the Itsy Bitsy Spiders cover this one as a big fave?
I'm very torn on this one. I think this is a hard stay away. Again, another situation we have Wofford playing their first D1 game. Although they had played 2 D2 games, I think that's important, noteworthy, and they won both those fairly convincingly. I can't speak to the caliber of competition there, but I think Wofford will come in a little more ready than we've seen some of these, initial openers for a lot of these teams. hard to say what Richmond's practice schedule has been like since the COVID interruption. There's just a lot of unknown variables here that I have really no appetite to lay aside here. So I'll sit back and observe from the sidelines. Jim, are you going to play aside?
I am not. I will give you a little insight on the competition that Wofford has played. It's Toccoa Falls and Carver Bible, who have lost by like 100 points to teams in the past. So like basically the two worst non-D1s that I've seen teams square off against. So not much competition.
Okay. So we should read nothing into those. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely don't. Wofford was missing Ryan Larson, a probable starting guard, and Isaiah Bigelow, a key forward off the bench. So, they might not be full strength quite yet. And Richmond's got its own problems because we don't know how much they were practicing since they had the positive in their program and shut down for a little bit. Yeah, like you said, this one is just stay away. You don't know what you're getting on either side. So unless you really think the number is way off, then it's hard to gauge anything too specific with the matchup here. What do you think, Kai?
Yeah, I mean, ordinarily you'd see the spread probably and think Wofford's probably the bet. But this year Richmond could be top 15, top 10 good. But again, out of quarantine, Jim, I'm just not really sure what we're going to get from the Spiders. I hope this game's on TV, though. I'd love to watch it during the day.
Richmond could be 2018 Wofford. That's what
exactly. They absolutely could be.
Yes.
Very much possibility. So kind of a wishy-washy stay away for us on that game, but it was just added to the schedule, cut us some slack. We will head over to UNC Wilmington versus East Carolina. Opened around 10.5 in favor of ECU. Might be 9.5, 10 now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Chat mob. This might be the best ECU squad in recent memory, maybe ever, guys. I don't know my ECU history too well, but Jaden Gardner rocks. He's their center. He's their do-everything big guy. Definitely a Player of the Year candidate in the American. Wilmington might be without their point guard. They probably are without their point guard, Shaquem Phillips, today. But Ian Steer making his debut most likely for the Seahawks. Jim, does that make you want to take Wilmington as a double-digit dog?
Kai, I hate to inform you, I'm seeing it down to 8 or potentially even 7.5 in some places. The value has entirely vanished for me. I like them as a double-digit dog, but goodness gracious, that's quite a bit. This is a huge stylistic clash. UNCW has a new coach, Takeo Siddle, a Kevin Keats assistant who wants to press, who wants to run, he wants to play 4 guards. The first couple of games of the year, they played Jake Boggs at center, who's like a 6'7", 190-pound shooter. Like they are just spread you out, do whatever they can. So they could get beat up inside unless they play a little more of a Majay Dodd and Ian Steer, like you said. But yeah, I liked Wilmington. I think they can turn over ECU's guards, but unfortunately, I just got to kind of shrug that the value is gone.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, loved Wilmington at 10. Agree with Jim. I would not touch it at 7. I think we may be learning, as Kai alluded to in his teaser, that this ECU team could be a special version relative to the program standards, which, let's just be frank, have not been that lofty in the last few regimes there. But you have the Boomerang coach, Mr. Joe Dooley, back. He's definitely upgraded the talent crop there. A lot of their main additions last season were banged up and hurt, and so they were dealing with a lot of different disjointed rotations. Never quite hit their stride, but when you have guys like Tremont Robinson-White, Tyree Pick-Jackson, both highly regarded JUCO guys, Jaden Gardner now, fully healthy and looking like an NBA prospect. This could be a real wrecking ball in the AAC. I'm not saying upper echelon AAC, but right in the middle of the pack, which would be an outlier for them. So if that comes to fruition, I think we look back at this spread and say, 10-7 was about right. But right now, it's hard for me to bet on that. So I liked UNC Wilmington at 10, but 7 is just too low.
The last time that ECU was in the top 110 of KenPom, obviously a kind of an arbitrary cutoff, but 1997 under Joe Dooley, they were 109th.
So right Dooley's done it.
He's under Joe Dooley.
He's right now they're 117th. So can he get them back up inside the top 100? We'll see.
Yeah, Joe Dooley to the Boomerang, ECU to Florida Gulf Coast, back to ECU. He came back. I agree. Wilmington plus 10.5 was a really strong play for me. My strike price was 9, so I wouldn't take them anything under that. I see now 7.5, 8, probably stay away now. But I do lean the over in this one. I think there's a good chance a lot of points are scored. So that's probably a stronger play for me now with the spread to where it is.
They might not be able to stop each other. ECU going to score inside. UNCW get out in transition. Yeah.
All right, moving on. Northern Arizona versus Arizona, the only power conference team we're talking today. Huge spread, maybe not too surprising. Around minus 22.5, minus 23 in favor of the Wildcats. This is Northern Arizona's first game. If it wasn't, I'd probably be on the Lumberjacks, but this is a roster with a ton of turnover from last year. I love Shane Burkhart. He's one of the best up-and-coming coaches in the country. But after that, beginning of the season shut down due to COVID, all the roster turnover, that makes me want to stay away from NAU and lean Arizona over anything. Matt, what do you think about the Cats today?
Yeah, so I've actually bet on the Arizona over the first two games. Possessions played to the mid-70s, so I'm inclined to think that I am right about Arizona wanting to play a little faster this year, although they are playing two twin towers up front a fair amount with Christian Cocolo and Jordan Brown, which doesn't exactly bode well for tempo. But if that sustains, I actually have a stronger lead here on the total than I do the side. I think Northern Arizona, we've seen teams come out of quarantine or playing their first game, whether it be off COVID disruption or not, play a little bit helter-skelter, a little too amped up. The anxiousness kind of gets to them. We see the ball go up and down the floor a lot faster. If we get that same kind of pinball effect today, I think an Arizona over is the right play here. I have no strong take on the side. I've seen Arizona struggle to get away from two. Grambling, a pesky SWAC team, or Eastern Washington last game. Very good Eastern Washington team, but one that Arizona should put to bed pretty quickly. They just didn't. So I'm going to stay away on the side here. Jim, where do you stand?
I kind of like Arizona just because the angle you mentioned of first game out of quarantine for mid-majors against high majors on the road. I mean, you go down the list of that of Oakland, Iona, Ryder, Niagara.
Yeah.
These are teams that have gotten blown out. I mean, Iona hung around at Seton Hall, but then ended up not covering in the second half. So it's been a pretty resounding bad news bears for mid-major teams going to a power conference team to start their year out of a COVID quarantine. So that angle really makes me lean Arizona. It's not super strong. The number isn't great, I don't think. I'm surprised that it's gotten all the way up to 23. Maybe people are definitely buying that angle that I mentioned. So, tread lightly there. But, gosh, I would not have the appetite to back a dog like NAU coming out of the situation that they're in.
Yeah, I agree. And, Matt, I agree with your lean on the total. Over, I think, is the play in this game as well. But as Jim said, Wildcats for me are nothing in this game, probably nothing in terms of a side perspective. We will get to our best bets, and then I think we have at least one more chat mob question, at least two, I guess, because Matt mentioned.
I have two documented right now. So chat mob, if you have other game requests, small slate, but peppermint now. We'll make sure we hit them before we sign off here.
We're going to talk about every game on the slate, most likely.
Yeah.
So we're going to best bets, and guys, my best bet was Wilmington at 10 pre-show. So that value is gone. I'm going to go to the extra board, guys, for a pick. I'm going Hampton plus 9. Correct me if I'm wrong on the spread again. Pre-show 9 for Hampton. They are heading to
7 or 8, my guy.
All right. Well, Jim, if you're going to give me 8, I'll take 8. But I would take it at 7 as well. They're heading to Norfolk State. This is an old MEAC rivalry. Hampton, formerly in the MEAC, headed down to the Big South. They're a well-coached team. They lost Jermaine Merrill. They lost Finn Stanley, two of the top 10 scorers in college basketball last season. But there's still a good core here. They went on the road and beat George Washington, a sorry team so far this year, the Colonials. But this game just feels closer, right? This is an old rivalry, and I like Hampton with this many points in this game.
Yeah, used to be MEAC rivals, and Joyner and Jones kind of went back and forth. I looked at the history between these two teams, and it's been like win-win, like back and forth between the two before Hampton left the MEAC for the Big South. So yeah, I could see it being more of a grind. I just like the roster a lot more on the Norfolk side. I'm not real excited about the Hampton roster this year, but it's a stay away from me. I wish you best of luck on your best bet.
Thanks, appreciate that. Well, Jim, keep the mic. Let's go to your best bet.
All right, Kai, I alluded to it earlier in the Chattanooga, Middle Tennessee section, but I'm going with the over here. It's at 138, 139. Let's get you an update. 139 is what I'll go with on the official number. Look, Middle Tennessee's had some super low-scoring games this year, but it's not because of tempo. They are playing pretty fast. Their possessions are up around 73, 74. There's just no shots being made in their games. Teams are shooting 18% from deep against them. Chattanooga's only shooting 20% right now themselves, so you really need some regression there. But I think the possession count expected is too high for a total to be below 140 in this one. I will take the over and hope that these Tennessee teams figure out how to put the ball in the basket.
Love it, Jim. That's where I stand as well. Lean that way. Matt, Any takes on that, or let's just move on to your best bet?
Yeah, I have no strong lean there. Sorry, Jim. I will root for you and Kai as well if you decide to trail. My best bet, we kind of already talked about it. It's Moorhead plus 13. I basically upgraded it to best bet status as I saw the line climb.
I don't think you get 13. It was never 13 during our show, unfortunately, Matthew.
Oh, I'm seeing 12.5 on the board right now. Someone in the chat mob said they got 13 during the show. All right, well,
I've seen 10.5 like basically the whole show. We'll let chat mob decide if does Matt get 13 or not.
Hey, I'm still on it at 10.5. I think the line's outrageous personally. Eastern Kentucky, they've been a wagon, no question, but they beat North Florida with the key starter down to start the year. They beat Charleston Southern down multiple key starters. Taking Xavier to overtime, yeah, obviously very impressive, but Xavier hasn't exactly been a world beater. Well, they did look pretty good last night. And beat USC Upstate, who really doesn't have a coach. They've been trying to do like a virtual coaching thing, which has been weird. So you can kind of put an asterisk on all of their efforts so far that could, I think, be contributing to some overinflation. Again, conference game, should play slower. Just handle the ball more, Head. Don't kick the ball in the stands. Just protect it, get shots up, value your possessions, and I think you stay inside the number. So I'll ride with the Moorheads.
Matt, chat mob is getting it. Some saying 10.5 everywhere, but multiple people saying 13.5 on MGM right now.
MGM. So. All right. So if you have an MGM access point, those listening, hop on. That's a steal of a number.
All right. Let's go to the questions of the chat mob. Matt, which games are we talking? Should we start with Fairfield Hartford in this one?
Fairfield Hartford. Kai, I know you have a strong take on that. Larry Gibson and AJ squared or AJS squared. AJS. I'm just going to call it AJS squared. Where do you stand on this one?
Well, I didn't have a strong take till it got bet up. I think it opened around 2.5. I got bet up to 4. I saw at one point. I certainly liked it there. Maybe down to 3.5, 3. But I lean Fairfield. What's that, Jim? Sorry.
2.5 now.
Yeah, I lean Fairfield in this one. Their offense is terrible. Let's just get that out of the way. I mean, they're probably the worst offensive team in the MAC, and that's saying something. There's a team called Marist in that conference, but their defense is also pretty good. And Hartford, while they have some talent with Tracy Carter, the former Marquette player, I do lean Fairfield as a dog. They're better as a dog, the Stags. So I'll lean that way in this game. Guys, are you with me? Are you against me? Are you on the fence?
I'm on the fence. This is a rematch from last Wednesday when Fairfield lost by 5 at Hartford. At home. That was at home in Fairfield. Yep. Now we're heading on the road to Hartford. I'm staying away. I got nothing. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm already on Fairfield, Kai, so I guess I'm with you. I don't feel good about it, though. I really don't. It's just that team is offensively anemic at times.
They are. So, Matt, what's the next game?
Don the Don, Southeast Missouri State, SEMO versus Lipscomb.
You're a SEMO guy.
I'm a big SEMO guy. I'm a big, as I've mentioned before, the 2 STL area schools. I mean, SLU is obviously awesome, but SEMO's
not STL area.
Like 2.5 hours away. Whatever. We'll make it a big radius around the city. And then SIUE. I like both these teams. Lipscomb has been down 2 key players the whole year. Their point guard KJ Johnson, and what's supposed to be a freshman phenom and Tommy Murr. Presumably are out. I haven't found no information on that, but I can only assume they are. SEMO has some talent this year. Their best guard, Chris Harris, got hurt last season. He's now fully healthy. They have a Nebraska transfer, Nana Akenton. Pronunciation check, please, if I missed that up. Just when you're betting a situation like this, when you have 2 key guards who can make shots, make plays, I think it's just a good spot for SEMO. And I think Brad Korn is a big upgrade over
Rick Ray.
Thank you, Rick Ray. So, yeah, that's where I'm at on that one. Takes?
Lipscomb's been on a mini tour also.
Yeah,
they played Lamar and Tulane in New Orleans, then they're at Cincinnati last Wednesday, at Arkansas on Saturday. Now they're at SEMO today. So, yeah, this is also there'll be a rematch of this on Wednesday. So it kind of an odd dynamic where they know they're going to be playing each other again. That's interesting. I sort of lean SEMO here.
Okay. Matt, at least one more, I think.
Oh, there's been so much love for EWASH. Oregon.
Ben C. He's leading a pretty big charge for EWASH Oregon thoughts. So I'll just give the context. EWASH coming from Arizona, flying up to Oregon, so doing a little Pac-12 tour there. Gave Arizona just 10 punches, went 18 rounds with the Wildcats. Do they do the same against Oregon, or does Oregon assert their dominance here, do you think, Kai?
I mean, Eastern Washington, Big Sky favorites. I don't even think it's close in that conference preseason. So I lean EWASH. Seems like a big number. They certainly impressed me staying close to Arizona. Got a couple good veteran guys in that team, Davison and Aiken, the Groves brothers. So I definitely lean towards EWash. My number is pretty close to what the current spread is. I probably stay away ultimately. And Oregon looked a little shaky against Seton Hall. I know they kind of came back. They looked shaky against Mizzou, kind of came back and proved us wrong on Seton Hall. But still a team I'm not trusting fully in the early going. Jim, any strong takes for you?
I think that's the right angle. Eastern Washington's a team that has a lot of experience, a lot of guys coming back. That's why they're the favorite in the Big Sky. And Oregon's still figuring out how they score. They don't have Will Richardson keying the offense. They just got LJ Figueroa eligible. So they're kind of trying to put all the pieces together. It's a little disjointed. Yeah, it's Eastern Washington or nothing for me there.
One more note on that game before we sign off here. Eastern Washington only played with 6 players against Washington State. They had, I think, some contract tracing barriers from COVID. They got 2 key guys back last game that scored 10 and 14 points respectively. So they have close to a full roster now. They never play a ton of guys, but those guys now in their second game, I think Eastern Washington could be a buy low, actually.
Okay. There you have it. I don't think there's any more games even on the board. We talked about basically all of them. But as always, thanks for joining us, guys. Please do subscribe and like the channel. SBRodds.com is where you can see all the latest lines and line shop and all sorts of content on that site as well. This channel will be the channel we do for every single show, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Central. We hope to see you tomorrow and the rest of the week. Good luck out there, and thank you for joining us.